Replace is a 2.5D narrative action thriller, and ever since I first saw the trailer for this game, it instantly grabbed me. The pixel art is gorgeous, and I'm a sucker for anything that has a cyberpunk feel or edge to it, so I knew this would be right up my alley. And after initially playing the demo, my only question was, could the full game deliver? Well, now thank you to the good folks at Sadcast Studios and Thunderful Publishing who hooked me up with a code, because now I have the answer to that question. My name is Serial Sensei, and let's talk about Replaced. So my initial thoughts after finishing Replaced, which took me just under 15 hours to complete. First thought was, yo, did I just play my favorite game of 2026? Is this my game of the year so far? Because boy, this was fire. I had such a good time playing this. Not only did it live up to my hype, but in certain ways it even exceeded the expectations that I had. Man, this was great. I mean, I don't need to tell you, this game is beautiful. It's one of the most gorgeous games I've ever looked at. The art direction, the cinematic feel to it, the gameplay, the combat, everything in this game just really hit for me. And no, it's not the perfect game, but for me, like, I don't need games to be perfect. I need them to be memorable, entertaining, and leave a good lasting impression, and this did all of the above. Yeah, I had an absolute blast playing Replace, and I'm so glad and happy to just be able to say, like, yeah, no, this lived up to the hype. This was everything that I wanted it to be, and even more in some facets. But yeah, initial thoughts after finishing Replace, this was absolutely fantastic, and it is one of my favorite games of 2026. The story of Replace revolves around an AI named Reach who gets trapped inside the body of a scientist named Warren Marsh, and after they fuse together, the crux of the game is the AI Reach wants to get back to its original form, which is outside of Warren's body, but in the midst of that, there are a ton of other things happening in this world. We are also living in the wake of a nuclear catastrophe, so Reach has to assimilate to this human body. It's trying to learn humans, trying to learn our emotions and why we do the things we do, while also surviving because it needs to keep the body alive so that it stays alive. And it's also, like I said, we're in the wake of a nuclear catastrophe. So we're dealing with, a corporation called the Phoenix Corporation, who kind of helped rebuild America after this catastrophe. And they did it kind of, I won't say in spite of the government, but they definitely weren't on the best terms with the government. And, they grew to be powerful and influential, and as we know, when most mega corporations get too much power, not a lot of good can come of that. Now, they did do some good things, but they've also done some other things that you will get to see. And the game takes place in the fictional world of Phoenix City, and like a lot of cyberpunk themes, you're dealing with corruption and survival, and people just desperate to, we're in the wake of a nuclear catastrophe. People are just desperate to cling on to some hope. People are just trying to survive, and you've got these different factions who live outside of the Phoenix City walls, and they go through, or they'll go to any means necessary to keep themselves alive, even if that means killing you along the way. So the game does a good job of making Phoenix City feel like a real place that has some emotion. You can feel the stakes of the situation once you start talking to the NPCs and you're gathering intel. You're finding documents here and there, and I would encourage you to read the documents, talk to the NPCs, because it helps just provide context of Phoenix City and just this world as a whole, to really understand like how it got to the state that it's in, and people's just reactions and how they're the means that they're going through to survive. And some are clinging on to hope, some of them are hopeless. It's a lot of different emotions going on as the game kind of unravels. And I think the game did a good job of infusing the story with the gameplay, of you uncovering these story bits as you naturally just play the game, as long as you take the time to really read them. And I kind of like just kind of the things that Reach had to go through as an AI, dealing with identity, being in this human's body, and also trying to understand the emotions of humans, especially in the wake of such an extreme situation. So I thought the game just handled a lot of those kind of typical cyberpunk themed beats very well. I like the story of the AI trying to get back to its original form. But yeah, the story, and like I said, I'm kind of vague on purpose to avoid spoilers because the narrative is a big part of this experience. But I thought the story of Replace was done very well. Doesn't necessarily reinvent the wheel, but you feel the realness, you feel the stakes, and you feel the emotion as you kind of go through and just talk to people. And like I said, just the world felt very real to me. So narrative wise, I thought Replace did a great job of telling the story, and it hit all of the beats for me that I would have wanted it to. In terms of gameplay, man, it felt good to throw hands in the trenches that are Phoenix City. But this gameplay is kind of stretched across a few different categories. You got combat, exploration, and then you've kind of got the platforming going on. And the combat has that free flow Arkham City, or just Arkham Batman, and Sleeping Doggish, I would say, kind of style, where it's this tug of war between, melee combos, countering, dodging, managing crowd control. The combos feel impactful. They aesthetically look pleasing. The game has this very just cinematic feel to it, and I think that enhances the combat. It just gives it a certain look and a certain feel to it that's just very pleasing to pull off. I wish there was a little bit more variety in terms of the combos that you could do. Maybe just have some other variations. And I wish it was a bit more to do with enemy variety, but even with those critiques, I still did really enjoy the combat. There are upgrades that you're going to eventually get, a gun that you'll be able to use. The gun has some fire takedown animations that you're going to be able to pull off, and you'll be able to get an ability that'll even let you deflect projectiles, and a few other upgrades that I won't spoil. But you've got combat. I think for the most part, like I said, even with the critiques that I have, I think it definitely gets the job done. And in terms of platforming and kind of exploration, as you're out in these different areas, you're swinging across pipes and jumping over platforms, and manipulating your environment, kind of solving these environmental puzzles so that you can progress. The puzzle platforming I don't think is really that hard. I feel like most of it is pretty straightforward, and it just provides a good flow for the game. It's not all action. It gives you action, and then it gives you sections where you gotta adventure around a little bit. You're still finding little items and documents while you're out exploring. And then the platforming also has like a cinematic feel to it, because like I said, you're gonna be jumping across pipes, you're gonna be getting chased. Like, it's gonna be a lot of wild stuff happening while you're out here, out and just in the environment that is Phoenix City. So I like the design of the platforming. I like how the environments and just the placement of the platforming, but I do wish it just felt a little better. Something about the platforming, just in the way it felt, wasn't as smooth as I would have liked, but I like the use of it and the way it was implemented. It definitely helped provide a good flow to the gameplay. And the part of the game that actually probably, I won't say impressed me the most, but kind of caught me by surprise is I didn't think there would be so many parts, or maybe not so many, but I didn't think this game would be as heavy on just being able to just go around and talk to people. I thought this was going to be a very point A to B kind of game, where we would just kind of, action, maybe cutscene here or there, and then action again. But, there are parts where you're going to get to sit around in what kind of is, I guess you could say, the main hub, the one safe haven in the craziness that is Phoenix City. And, this is where, you get to do side quests, you get to talk to people, get lore, get background. We can find little songs that you can play on this really cool device that Reach has. You can also use that device to scan items, and every time you scan it, it gets an entry into the device, and then you can read the background on it, whether it be a document that you found, an actual item that you found. I really love the aesthetic of that little device. But just take your time, man. Really talk to people, get a feel for the city, get a feel for the environment. And it's cool to just see Reach interact with these people, because he's still experiencing, he's an AI. A lot of the stuff he just doesn't know. He gets to see like a cat for the first time. He's just experiencing these different human emotions and sensations that he's never, that are foreign to him. So it's cool to see him kind of navigate that while also learning everybody else's background and, getting the full feel of these characters. And there are people with, distinct personalities. I think this game has a good amount of just feeling and heart that was put into the entire world, and also just like being able to just slow down and take in the art. Even though the place that you're in is kind of a, it's a poor area, people are struggling, but the game just looks beautiful, and it's cool to see just some of the little subtle details in the artwork that they did. or that they implemented into the environments. So yeah, I just think the gameplay overall, even this different sections in terms of platforming, combat, and exploration, that they all work in tandem to create a gameplay loop and just give it a certain flow that was very satisfying to play through. So even with the critiques I have, I think the gameplay overall of Replace definitely got the job done, and I had a blast playing it. The soundtrack of Replace was fantastic. It is moody, it is atmospheric, it has this dark cyberpunk feel to it, but it perfectly meshes with just the emotions and everything that is going on while you're in the world of Replace. It feels like a soundtrack that was specifically like crafted for this game, and I really love that you can go inside the little menu in the device and scroll through all of the songs that you find as you're out exploring. My only complaint is that you can't play the songs outside of the menu. Like once you close the device and close the menu, the song just stops. I wish it could just play as you're walking around and you could just pick whatever song you want to listen to. But the soundtrack itself, great soundtrack, man. A good soundtrack can really elevate an experience, and it really elevated this game and just meshed so well with what was going on the screen. And like I said, it felt like a perfect match for the world of Replay. So the soundtrack, A1, Chef's Kiss. This soundtrack gets no complaints from me. Performance-wise, Replace ran very well for me. I only had 2 bugs, I believe. I had one bug where I was dropping a box from a platform, and as I dropped the crate, I fell at the same time, and it just froze for some reason. And then I had another incident involving when you had to take the battery out of this machine, and I think I went to either take the battery out or put it back in, and then it just froze. But in the incidences where you have those bugs, you can just reload from the last checkpoint, and this game saves a lot, so you're never gonna have to go back and do too much over again. But outside of literally like those 2 moments, I never had anything else happen. The game never crashed. I never had any frame drops. Just those few bugs. And the game has had a day 1 patch and a few patches since it's actually came out. So if you play it now, it should run pretty smooth. All in all, man, I thought Replace was a fantastic game. This, met all of my hype and even exceeded my expectations in certain areas. I think it's a game where each individual piece of it kind of helps enhance the next thing. The way the soundtrack to me enhanced the mood of the game, the way the pixel art and the overall direction gave it a more cinematic feel, which helped uplift like the combat and the exploration, and every piece of this game came together for just a beautiful full picture that I thoroughly enjoyed playing. Now, of course, I could nitpick and critique a few things, which I did, but as an overall package, this really knocked it out the park for me, and this is for sure one of my favorite games of 2026. So once again, thank you to Sadcat Studios and Thunderful Publishing for the code. My name is Serial Sensei. Y'all stay safe, y'all stay hydrated, and I will catch you on the next one.